gracias y hola a todos. I will also be giving my presentation in English. So, once again, my name is Ben D'Angelo, and I work in the search quality group at Google as a software engineer. And I'll be speaking more about Webmaster tools, which was mentioned earlier in the keynote. But first, sort of at a very high level, what are our goals? So first, from the user perspective, we really care about good search results. And that means we want the results to be timely, we want them to be accurate, objective, and as relevant as possible. So a couple observations about this. One, the better information that you have, the better websites that you can create. And the better websites that are out there and that we can pull into our index, that translates directly into better search results for users. Another factor is that if we're able to understand the websites better through information that we communicate to you and you communicate to us, then we're better able to understand the content and more effectively deliver search results. So that's the user side. On the Webmaster side, we also care strongly about providing support for all webmasters. Whether you have a large multinational business or are a small business owner with a website dedicated to a particular region, we really want to have tools which are available and useful for all. And especially with the number of websites on the internet on the order of hundreds of millions, we really need something that scales. We can't have tools which are entirely manual, and we want something that will be useful for a wide range of webmasters, from the very advanced webmaster who needs a lot of flexibility and fine detailed control over their website, to a novice webmaster who maybe just needs sort of a very general tool. So most of my talk will be basically a walkthrough of Webmaster tools and the various pieces of functionality that you can find there. And I'm going to try to cover three things. First, just what is out there. Two, how do you use it? I'll have a bunch of screenshots and give examples of how to control the various tools. And three, why would you want to use these tools? What can they do for your website? So the only URL you really need to remember today is up at the top there, google.com/webmasters. And this is Webmaster Central, which Adam Lasnik will be speaking about in the next session. And Webmaster Tools is over here on the left. And so this is sort of the entry point to get to Webmaster Tools. So let's just dive in. When you first log in, you see your dashboard, which lists the websites which you've added to your account. These can include various levels of specificity. So you can have the domain, say example.com here. I don't know how readable that is, but just above it, you can have a subdomain, such as googlewebmastercentral.blogspot.com. And you can also have a site added at a subdirectory level, such as google.com/webmasters. So most of the examples I'll be giving are actually details of this last site, google.com/webmasters. A couple of other points of interest on the dashboard. Over on the right, you see the message center. Occasionally, if Google wants to send you a specific message about one of your sites, an alert or just something informative, you might find it there. So keep a lookout. And then also on the right, there's just a few general tools reporting spam that you might see in search results and the like. So if you just added your site, say google.com/webmasters, you'd see a screen like this. So before we show you many details of your site, we want to verify that you are actually the owner, the webmaster. So to do that, you have two different options. One, you can upload an HTML file to your server. The other option, if you have control over, if you can't upload to the server, but you can control the files themselves, is to kind of specify a meta tag. So clicking through on the verification instructions there would let you do that. So once you verified a site, you would see various important summary details on this overview page. For example, whether you have any pages in our index, whether we know about your site, the last date that your home page was crawled, and possibly crawl errors, and other important notifications. Earlier, Brian mentioned malware, and we do a lot of detection to try and find malware on the web. So if, for example, your site got hacked, we might display a notification here saying, we found some malicious content on your site. Now, over on the left, you can see various categories, diagnostics, statistics. Each of these has several subcategories. And I'll be hitting a subset of the various options you have here. But I definitely recommend logging in, adding a site, and just exploring and playing around, seeing what you can do and what information is available. So the first specific example is the content analysis tool. One aspect that would make your website very search engine friendly and that would help have better search results is if your title tags, your alt attributes, meta descriptions are all utilized effectively. So you want them to be descriptive, accurate to the pages that they are on, and so this tool, content analysis, kind of helps you see some of that information. So there's a few categories here at the top. You can see, hopefully, a category for meta descriptions. So for example, if you have meta descriptions which are extremely long, it might not be very useful to the user to see, what really is this page about. It really should be something that's concise but informative. If they're too short, you might not be getting as much information across as you can. And if you have duplicate meta descriptions across pages of your site, we really can't tell what each separate page is about. And it'll be harder to direct search queries to the right page. And you see similar details about titles, the duplicates. And at the bottom, if we have a problem with pages that we can't index, you might see a message there. So this is useful sort of first pass just to see, are there things about my site that I can optimize relative to the content. Another tool is to look at crawl errors. You may have the best site in the world, but if we can't access it, it's not really going to be very useful. So regularly checking to see if we're having problems accessing your site can be very effective. One example here is session IDs. You want to make sure your site is crawlable by Googlebot, which is our web crawler. That doesn't require cookies and special JavaScript handling. So there's many possible errors that this will display. I won't go into all of them. But you can see there's various categories here. Possibly pages which can't be found. Possibly pages which are returning bad response codes. URLs that you may have uploaded into a sitemap, which Adam will talk a little more about, that are having problems. You can find details of the URLs and what the problems were with those URLs on the right. So this is definitely something which is a very rich resource. I'll also point out that not everything that appears here is necessarily a problem. The web is a very big place, and people may make links to your site that point to pages that don't exist. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem that they should exist. They may just be a malformed link. So don't take everything here as something that needs to be fixed immediately, but it's very useful to look at and see if you're having regular problems or if there's extensive problems with some area of your website. The next tip is to really consider what users are looking for. And there's a couple tools that will be useful for this. But one main point is that you want the pages on your site to actually contain the words that users will be searching with when you want them to get to your site. So what does Googlebot see? Googlebot, our web crawler, goes around, follows links, and fetches your pages. And the links that people point to your site with have anchor text, special phrases. So on this tool, you can see a list of the different phrases that Googlebot has found. You can click on one particular one to see the different variations. And this is really useful to see whether these phrases are actually informative, whether they all just say, click here, because you really want this to be reflective of the content on your site. Also point out that our example site that we're looking at here, google.com/webmasters, is a subdirectory. And if you verified at the subdirectory level, you won't necessarily see all the information that would be available if you added the root level of the domain. So if you can add the root of the domain, I definitely recommend that. In this case, you would also see the top words and phrases on your site itself, and also a breakdown of content type that was found on your site. If it was all text HTML, if you saw XML, other file types. So that was the side on what we see on your site. On the other side is what are we seeing users actually getting to your site from. So this is a list of phrases that resulted in impressions and actual traffic to your site. So on the left, we see a list of queries for which some page on your site showed up in the top 20 results. In this case, within the last week. Although if you click at the top there, you can alter the time frame and even the region that you're looking at. So for example, google.com/webmasters is the English version of Webmaster Tools. And it makes sense that the top query it showed up in the results page for is Webmaster Tools. And next to the queries, you can see the position that, on average, that the query showed up for. Note that since results are constantly fluctuating, if you issued one of these queries now, you might not necessarily see your site at the exact same position. But this is sort of the average over some period of time. So this left column is the list of impressions. On the right, you see the queries for which a user actually clicked on your site. So we would definitely expect significant overlap between these two. But you can also consider what queries had low traffic that had high impressions. So these might be queries which your site is showing up for, but for some reason users aren't actually incited to click on your result. So perhaps your snippet isn't very informative. Perhaps the title of your page doesn't look very interesting. But it's a good tool to look at to consider what areas could you be developing more. And you also might see areas that you hadn't considered targeting in your user base, but you see they're searching for uniforms, or mentioned earlier, and it can be a way of seeing some area of your site that you want to develop more. So this, coupled with the terms that Google finds on your site and in links to your site, can be very useful. The next tip is to set a geographic target for your site. Some sites may be totally agnostic to a particular geographic region, but for some, you may want to associate the site with one particular place. Perhaps you sell a product and only want to sell it, or only want to ship it in a particular region. Or perhaps the content is only really relevant to certain users. So in this case, you can select the option here to associate your site with a region, and then there's a little drop-down menu. Note that this is different from targeting a particular language. If you have a site which you want to make available for all Spanish speakers, then this is not really the tool you want to use. Google already does a fairly good job of detecting the language of a site and displaying it for appropriate users. But this would be more if it's a geographic location that you want to specify. Also, there are several other factors that Google takes into account for this type of association, such as the TLD, or top-level domain. So if you have a site on a .com, .mx TLD, then Google probably already knows that your site is specific to Mexico. However, if you have a neutral TLD, such as .com, .net, .org, then this tool might be useful. We also take into account server location if the server hosting your website is actually located in a particular region. So this is useful for users issuing localized queries, or if they want to restrict the results to pages from a particular region. Sometimes you can see on the home page, restrict to local results, to results from Mexico. So a few other tools. The first is analysis of robots.txt. Hopefully everybody's familiar with robots.txt, but it basically is a file which specifies what web crawlers are allowed to access within your site, what subdirectories, what pages. And it's a very powerful tool because with a few characters you can disallow all web crawlers from accessing your site. But with great power comes great responsibility. And any errors in this file can be very critical. So this tool allows you to look at the latest copy that we have of your robots.txt and play around with it a little bit. So at the top you can see when was the last time we accessed this file, what was the response, was it 200, meaning everything is okay, perhaps it's a 404, meaning you don't have one. And in that case, we'll simply crawl your site as normal. Or perhaps we had an error accessing your robots.txt, in which case that might be a problem. Down below, if you scroll down, you'll also see any errors that we might have in parsing lines of your robots.txt. Perhaps you have a misspelling in one of the commands, and you can test URLs against the robots.txt to say, will this URL be blocked? Will it be allowed? And make sure that all of your assumptions are actually accurate and that the file is doing what you intend. Another tool is the Earl removal tool. Typically, robots.txt is used to disallow webmasters, web crawlers from crawling portions of your site. But it sometimes happens that you accidentally put web pages up which you realize shouldn't be available to the public. For example, if you accidentally publish credit card numbers or some account numbers that you need to remove, then this can be a useful tool. So certainly you want to remove it first from your site to make it not available. But if it still shows up in Google search results, then you have several options here of removing that. So you can remove particular URLs, a subdirectory, or your entire site. You also need to be careful not to abuse this tool. It can be possible to accidentally remove your site, and sometimes people are confused as to why their site is not showing up in search results. So use with caution. Finally, we have Webmaster Tools gadgets. How many people are familiar with the iGoogle homepage, personalized homepage? A few people. So the homepage looks something like this, although of course it's very, excuse me, customizable. At the bottom you see a collection of gadgets, which can be, pieces of information, something about the weather, stock prices, little games, kind of mini applications. But if you are interested in regularly checking your website for errors and the various tools in Webmaster Tools, then these are available here. So from this page, you can create a new tab with all the Webmaster Tools gadgets. Also, if we look back on some of the specific tools, you'll see a button on the upper right with a plus that says Google. That'll allow you to add a gadget for that specific tool to your homepage. So that can be very useful for checking very easily on a regular basis any problems that your site might be having.
Hello. I have a question related to targeting. My site is directed to Mexican visitors, but I do obviously visitors from other Spanish-talking countries. And selecting a country in this section will diminish or lower positions in other Google-specific sites like Google.com, Venezuela, or something like that.
In general, it won't diminish your traffic on a general search query. But if someone is specifically looking for sites from, say, Spain, then I believe in that case it may restrict to sites that we think are from Spain. But a general search query, it still has just as much chance to show up.
I think that these tools overlap with Google Analytics. Could you please explain a little about why two similar tools?
I can't speak too much about this as I haven't had a large role in the development of the tools. I think they have developed somewhat independently and have served slightly different purposes. I think analytics has looked a little more at generic things about the content of your site. Webmaster Tools has initially at least been focused on problems that Google specifically has with your site and communication to you about various factors that might be informative, like the content analysis of duplicate titles and things like that. Over time, as more features are added to Webmaster Tools and to Google Analytics, they definitely are inhabiting similar spaces, and I don't know what will happen in the future in terms of their interactions, but they both are somewhat complementary and both can definitely be useful for your site.
Básicamente quería hacer una pequeña sugerencia respecto a los diferentes elementos que están utilizando Google en todos sus productos. Pues sugerirles para efecto de las orientaciones geográficas que pudieran integrar también una herramienta para poder considerar los aspectos demográficos. Hasta este momento todas las consultas que se realizan por estado, por división política, por país. Sin embargo, los países y las fronteras culturales de los países suelen romperse. Pongo el ejemplo muy concreto de Francia, la región sur es Occitania, en España tenemos el País Vasco y Cataluña. Cuando nosotros como Webmaster, programadores, queremos dar a conocer nuestro producto, tal vez nuestro mercado esté fragmentado y esté una parte dividiéndose en la frontera sur de un país y el otro producto de posibles compradores estén en la frontera norte. ¿Habrán considerado ustedes en algún momento poder integrar una herramienta que nos permita hacer las consultas más por aspectos demográficos que por aspectos políticos?
That's a great idea, and I think it's something which is definitely possible in the future. I think in general, targeting as wide an audience as possible doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt if other users can find your content, and perhaps you'll discover new users that you weren't intending. But I think there has been a lot of development, and there's a lot of area for growth in the areas of personalization and kind of smarter matching up of users' needs to what's available on a website. So one aspect of that could be tools on the Webmaster side to specify what you're targeting. Partly it could be on the user side of what they're looking for. And I think it would be a blend of behind-the-scenes algorithmic work, which is what's mostly done at the moment, as well as explicit tools. So I don't know of anything in the works at the moment, but it's certainly an area which is very interesting, and I'll take the suggestion back to the team.